Hello, my driver's ed people. How are you guys doing today? We are finally going to wrap up chapter 4. This has been a long chapter, but that's okay. It's been a good chapter. There's so much information in here that you guys need to know on a daily basis when you drive. This entire chapter has been about traffic laws, how you handle yourself when you're driving a car out on the roads. And yesterday we spent most of the day talking about the proper way to pass another car. And we talked specifically about the 3 questions that you should ask yourself before you ever make a pass. So think about it for a second and see if you can remember what those 3 questions are. You can pause the video if you need to and try to remember what those 3 questions are. I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide and show you what those 3 are. That's right. It is number 1, is it legal? That's the first thing you need to look at. Is it legal to pass wherever you are? And remember, there's all sorts of ways to know whether it's legal or not. Sometimes there's a sign that tells you it's a no passing zone. Sometimes there's a solid yellow line on your side of the center of the road that tells you it's illegal to pass. Other times there's nothing telling you it's illegal to pass. You just know that the rules say it's illegal. For example, if you're out on a country road where there's no signs, no pavement markings, if there's a curve and you can't see around the curve, well, it's illegal. If there's a hill and you can't see over the hill, it's illegal to pass, even though there's no markings or signs. But if it is legal, then the second question is it safe? Is it safe to pass? Are there any cars coming towards you? If there are, then it's not safe. If there aren't any cars coming towards you, then maybe it's safe. But there are other factors too. What are the weather conditions like? What are the road conditions like? If you can answer yes to both of those questions, yes, it's legal, yes, it's safe. The third question that you got to ask is it beneficial? Are you far enough from your destination that if you pass this person, you're actually going to gain something by passing them? Or are you so close to home that even if you pass them, you're really not going to get home any quicker or get to your destination any quicker? So those 3 questions you should always ask yourself before you pass. Okay, so that's a little review from yesterday. Let's go ahead and move into today. We got a lot of good stuff to talk about today. The first thing that we're going to talk about is turning. Right turns, left turns, they're very similar, but there are some things that we need to know when it comes to making a turn on a roadway. The first thing is that you need to give a turn signal. Whether you're turning right or whether you're turning left, give a turn signal. Okay, so you need to activate your turn signal and obviously activate the correct signal. That's important. But then also, you need to give your signal from the proper turning lane. So most of the roads that we drive on, there's only one lane in your direction. You know, it's a 2-lane, 2-way roadway. So one lane in each direction. So as long as you're on the right side of the road, you're in the proper lane. But there are a lot of places where there are multiple lanes in a certain direction. For example, right out in front of Staunton High School on Deneen Street, it's a one-way street with 2 lanes. Well, if you're wanting to turn right and you're in the left lane, you can't do that. You cannot turn right in an intersection from the left lane. First, you have to switch lanes, and then you can turn right from that lane. So being in the proper turning lane is important. Second, when you turn, you need to turn into the right-hand lane of the roadway the driver is entering. So here again, if you're on just a regular 2-lane, 2-way roadway, then obviously you want to turn onto the right-hand lane. That's the lane that you're going to be driving in. If it's a multi-lane roadway, you still need to turn into the farthest right lane. If you're making a right turn, you turn into the farthest right lane. There are a few exceptions to this in big Metropolitan areas where there might be multiple turning lanes, and then you stay in whatever lane you're in. You don't change lanes as you're turning, but generally speaking, you're turning into the right-hand lane. And anytime you are turning, you always want to be watching out for pedestrians or bicyclists, and you're going to yield to them prior to making the turn. Left turns, things are very similar there. Only you're going to be giving a left turn signal and again, turn into the proper turning lane. So on a left turn, you're going to be turning into the lane that's closest to the intended direction of travel. So if you're turning left onto a multi-lane roadway, you're going to turn into the first available lane that's headed in the direction that you want to travel. You're also going to yield the right-of-way to pedestrians, just like we said before. And this one's really important, and I see people do this incorrectly a lot. If you are waiting to turn left and there's traffic coming and you don't have a chance to turn yet, do not turn your wheels early. Don't turn your wheels before you're actually going to make the turn. There's a very important reason for this too. If before you have a chance to turn, if you have your wheels turned to the left and someone comes up behind you and doesn't get stopped and rear ends you, you are going to get pushed into oncoming traffic. It can happen. It happens a lot. A friend of mine from church is a teacher at Southwestern, and several years back, this situation happened. A mom and a dad were riding on their motorcycle. They were out on a weekend ride, and they were just headed down the highway, and there was a truck in the oncoming traffic that was stopped waiting to turn left. They had their wheels turned to the left. Someone came up behind them and rear-ended them and pushed them right in front of the motorcycle. And both the people on the motorcycle were killed in the wreck. Do not turn your wheels early. Wait until it's actually you're going to make the turn. Wait until you start moving the vehicle before you make that turn. Here's a little picture that I put together. So this is Google Images of Deneen Street. This is right out there by the elementary where the one-way portion of Deneen starts. If you're in this little sports car here and you're waiting to turn right, there are 2 lanes of traffic on Deneen Street. You have to turn into this right lane. You cannot go out there and turn into the left lane. That's why I've got a red arrow there. You can't do that. You have to turn into this right lane. Now, if you want to be in the left lane after you make the turn, then you put your turn signal on and you move over and you move into the left lane. But when you first make that turn, you have to move into the right lane. Speaking of changing lanes, if you want to change lanes, there's a proper way to do that. So there are multiple things you have to do. Number one, you need to check your mirrors to see if there's any traffic behind you. You guys may or may not already know this, but your mirrors can't show you everything. They don't give you a wide enough view to be able to see everything. They do a really nice job of showing what's behind you. They don't do a nice job of showing what's off to the side of you. You have to turn your head and look over your shoulder to see that. We call that the blind spot. It's the blind spot because when you're looking forward, you can't see it. When you glance in your mirror, you can't see it. It's blind to you. You have to turn your head over your shoulder and look to see what is there. So before changing lanes, you've got to check your blind spot. Whatever direction you're going to be moving, that's the blind spot you check. So if you're changing from a left lane to a right lane, you check your blind spot over your right shoulder. If you're changing from a right lane to a left lane, you check your blind spot over your left shoulder. Give the proper turn signal. If you're turning left, you put your left signal on, and vice versa if you're turning right. And then once you've determined that everything's clear and you've given the proper signal, then you're going to carefully switch lanes. That's how you change lanes. U-turns. There are multiple forms of turnabouts. A U-turn is a type of turnabout. We're going to talk about turnabouts in more depth later on, but they've put this piece of information into this chapter, so I'm going to share it with you now. U-turns, if you're going to perform a U-turn, the law says you have to have 500 feet of visibility in all directions, like forward and back. So 500 feet of visibility, how much is that? Well, that's about 2.5 blocks in a normal town situation. So you got to be able to see clearly for at least 2.5 blocks. Roundabouts. This is not something that you've got in Staunton, not something that we have here in Carlinville, although the square in Carlinville is kind of close to a roundabout, but it's not technically one. But roundabouts have started to gain popularity across the United States. They've been very popular in Europe for decades, but they've started to gain popularity in the United States because they're an efficient way to move traffic. You don't have so much stopping and waiting. People can keep moving. All normal rules of the road apply in a roundabout situation. You have to use your turn signals to enter the roundabout, to switch lanes within the roundabout, to exit it. You've got to use your turn signals. All of those normal rules apply. If you're asking, well, what is a roundabout? Here's a picture of one. The closest one to you guys that I'm aware of is in Alton. There's a roundabout in Alton, and that's the picture that I have for you here. So right here is where you would enter that roundabout. So right here is where you enter that roundabout, and you just travel around here to the right, and there's multiple places that you can exit the roundabout. So you can exit off this direction. As you go around, there's a road over here that you can exit off. If you continue around, there's a road over here you can exit off. So this is a way of traveling and having options to all of these roads without actually having to stop. It keeps traffic moving. It does a nice job of keeping traffic moving. Here is, boy, that's really washed out, but here's an overhead view of that roundabout as seen on Google Maps. So you can see it's literally a circle. Normally, if we had a situation like this, we would just have a four-way stop, but this keeps traffic moving, and it's a more efficient way to deal with a traffic situation. So that's a roundabout. All right, what about some special stops? Well, one special stop that's really important is a school bus. If a school bus is stopped to load or unload passengers, a driver, so you as the driver of a car, you must stop before meeting or overtaking. That means, if you're headed towards the school bus, you got to stop. Or if you're coming up behind the school bus, you have to stop. You cannot pass them. And it's different than just a normal stop sign. At a normal stop sign, you would stop, make sure it's clear, and then you would go. That's not the way it works with a school bus. With a school bus, you have to stop, and you have to stay stopped until the lights quit flashing and they put that stop sign away. Then you can pass by the school bus. So school buses are a special situation. If they're loading or unloading passengers, you have to stop. How do you know if they're loading or unloading passengers? Well, as you can see from the video that I've got here, the way that you know is they put out this stop sign. They've got the stop sign here that extends from the bus, and then they've got flashing red lights. When you see flashing red lights on the school bus, especially these lights up top, that tells you that that bus is unloading or loading passengers, and you have to stop. You have no option about it. If you pass a school bus that's loading or unloading passengers, your license will be suspended. There doesn't even have to be a police officer there to witness it. The driver of the school bus can write down your license plate number. They can call the cops, and the cops will come and suspend your license. Okay, it does not have to be witnessed by a cop. If the owner of a vehicle refuses to say who was driving the vehicle, then the owner of the vehicle's license will be suspended. This is written in Illinois law. You can read it in the rules of the road book for yourself. It's a 3-month suspension for the owner of the vehicle if they refuse to turn over the name of the driver of the vehicle. All right. The only time a vehicle is not required to stop for a school bus is when both vehicles are on a 4-lane roadway and the bus is stopped in the opposite direction from which a driver is traveling. So if you're on a 4-lane roadway and there's 2 lanes of traffic in one direction, 2 lanes of traffic in another, and the school bus is on the opposite side of the road from you, you don't have to stop. This is not going to happen in Staunton or Livingston or Williamson, okay? It's not going to happen in these towns. We don't have 4-lane roadways here. But if you get into somewhere like Edwardsville, you might be able to find this situation, or definitely if you were in St. Louis, although that's Missouri and they may have different rules. But anyway, this rule is in place. If you're on a 4-lane roadway and the school bus is on the opposite side of the road, you don't have to stop. The reason is that school buses are not allowed to let kids off that would be going all the way across those 4 lanes. So you don't have to worry about a kid coming across. Now, having said that, you never know when little Johnny's going to take off running after that paper that just blew out of his hand. So you still need to proceed with caution. Railroad crossings are another example of a special stop. If an electric signal is flashing, so those are those lights up there that flash for the railroad, or if the gate, that's that arm that comes down to block travel, if that gate is lowered or if the signal is flashing, you must stop. It doesn't mean take a look and see if you can get through there before the train gets there. You have to stop. Even if you look and you're like, man, I know I can get across these tracks before that train gets here. It doesn't matter. You cannot go across. It's illegal. This is another example of a time where a police officer does not have to be present. Trains are equipped with cameras and they can record you breaking the law and turn that information in. Not only do you have to stop, but there are rules about where you're supposed to stop. You can't get any closer than 15 feet to the railroad crossing, and you're not supposed to be any farther back than 50 feet. So you're supposed to be within that 15 to 50 foot window. A couple of pieces of information regarding railroad crossings. You should always expect there to be a train. Anytime you see a railroad crossing, approach that crossing expecting a train to be there, not expecting the opposite. You don't assume that there's not going to be a train. You always expect a train. And if you're expecting a train, that's going to make you look and listen to see if there's actually one there. So when you look and listen, always expecting a train, you've got a really good likelihood of living. Look, listen, and live. If you just take it for granted that there won't be a train there, sooner or later you're going to be wrong, and that's going to end badly. The comparison in mass and energy between a train and a car is the same comparison of energy between a car and a can of soda. So if you think about what would happen if a car hit a can of soda, what would happen to that can of soda? That's the same amount of energy that train has compared to a car. So that's what a train can do to a car. So that's not a battle that you want to be in. Parking. So there are some special situations that come up in parking, one of which is parking on a hill. There's not a lot of hills in Staunton, but there are some. And so you need to know what to do when parking on a hill. Plus, for a lot of you, you're going to be driving other places than Staunton, so this is just something you need to know. When you're parking on a hill, it's important to put your vehicle in park. That's true parking anywhere. But then also, you need to set your parking brake. That way, if the car were to pop out of gear and try to roll down the hill due to gravity, your parking brake would hold the vehicle in place. So put the vehicle in park and set the parking brake. In addition to that, there's a proper way to turn your wheels. If you're downhill, your wheels always go towards the curb or towards the edge of the road. So anytime the front of the car is lower than the back of the car, that's considered downhill, and your wheels go towards the curb or towards the edge of the road. The reason is if the car were to start to roll, it would roll over here and it would bump into the curb and stop it, or it would roll off the road and it wouldn't cause a wreck. If you are uphill, so the nose of the car is higher than the trunk of the car. If you are uphill and there's a curb, which is that elevated piece of concrete, if there's a curb, you're going to turn your wheels away from the curb or to the left if you're parking on the right-hand side of the road. And then you even want to back up just a little bit so that these wheels barely touch the curb. And then that's going to ensure that your car's not going to roll away. If you're uphill without a curb, then your wheels are going to turn to the right or towards the shoulder of the road. And that's because if your car starts to roll, it'll roll off the road, not out into the road. So that's hill parking. Hill parking is actually a form of parallel parking. You're parking parallel to the direction of traffic. So here you can see the direction of traffic is like this, and your car is parallel to that direction. Parallel parking in general, which includes hill parking, your car has to be within 12 inches of the curb or the edge of the road. So that's 1 foot. Okay, you have to be within 12 inches of the curb. Vehicles must be parked in the direction traffic is moving. So if it's a two-lane, two-way roadway, you have to be parked on the side of the road with the direction of traffic that your car is facing. You can't be parked opposite of the direction of traffic. So that means, in general, you can't go and park on the left side of the road. You always have to park on the right side of the road. The exception to that is if you're on a one-way street, and then both the left and the right would have traffic moving in the same direction. So you can park on either side there. A few other things that are just good for us to know. It is prohibited, that means not allowed, it's prohibited to stop, stand, or park in certain situations. Double parking is one. So if we go back a couple slides and take a look at this image, double parking would be, here we've got our edge of the road, and here is a car that is parked. If another car came and parked next to this car, that's called double parking. That's not allowed. You can't do that. So you cannot double park. You can't park next to another vehicle. You also cannot park in front of a public or private driveway. You can never block someone's driveway, whether it's a business or whether it's just somebody's house. You can't park in front of their driveway. That's illegal. Cars have to have access to that driveway. You cannot park within 15 feet of a fire hydrant for obvious reasons. The fire hydrants are there for emergency situations for firefighters to use that as a water source. And if your car is blocking it, they're going to forcefully move your car out of the way by ramming it with the fire truck. That's going to damage your car. That's going to damage the fire truck. But guess who's liable for it? You are, because you're parked illegally. You're not allowed to park within 20 feet of a fire station driveway because they use big vehicles and they need lots of room to be able to exit or enter the fire station. And so you can't park within 20 feet of a fire station driveway. Or you also can't park within 20 feet of a crosswalk at an intersection. So you got to stay at least 20 feet back from crosswalks at intersections. The reason is because you don't want to be blocking other drivers' view of a pedestrian that could be walking along. So you got to stay at least 20 feet back. A few other things here. You cannot park within 30 feet of a stop sign or yield sign or any kind of traffic control signal like traffic lights. You can't park within 30 feet of them. The reason is that you don't want to block people's view of those traffic control devices. You also cannot park on the side of the road within 50 feet of the nearest rail of a railroad crossing. Same idea here. You don't want to block people's view of oncoming trains. All of these rules are designed for safety, to keep everybody safe. A few last things here. We are almost done with today's lecture. I think this might be kind of a quick one today, but a few last things. Just in case you were wondering, if you ever thought maybe this would be a good idea, it's not. You cannot drive on a sidewalk. It's illegal. You can't take your car on a sidewalk. I don't know why anyone would think that was okay, but no, you can't do it. Not allowed to do it. You cannot ride in a house trailer while it's being moved on a street or a highway. So let's say that you guys have a camper, right? I mean, that's another name for a camper, is a house trailer. And you guys are getting ready to go camping. You're going to go, to Sandcrest or somewhere. You're going to go to a campground. And you're like, I don't want to ride in the truck. hey, I'll just ride in the camper. No, you can't do that. That's illegal. Now, if you've got an RV where, the camper itself drives, it's got an engine and a steering wheel and all that kind of stuff, hey, now you're okay. You can do that. But you cannot ride in a camper while you're on the way to the campground. And finally, you cannot operate a sound system at a volume that can be heard 75 feet away. Okay, I want to talk about two things here. One, 75 feet away is like nothing. I don't know if you've ever thought about this. So think about a football field, right? You guys have all been to a football game or played in a football game. 75 feet is from the 25-yard line to the goal line. Even the crappiest car I ever owned, which was a 1989 Chevy Cavalier that had a miserable sound system in it, it could be heard from 75 feet away. All right. So it's not illegal to own these sound systems. It's illegal to operate these sound systems at a volume that can be heard from 75 feet away. And specifically, the law says while you're driving down the road. Okay. So you can have a really high dollar fancy sound system that's got big subwoofers in the trunk and whatever, and you can bounce quarters on your trunk. You can own those sound systems, but if you're driving down the road operating them at those volumes, you can get a ticket for it. So you just should know. So if you want to buy a $500 car and put a $3,000 sound system in it, more power to you. Just know that if you're operating it at those volumes, you're going to get a ticket. Okay. So just be aware of that. Hey guys, that is the end of our lecture today. We have done it. We have finally made it to the end of chapter 4. I hope you learned a lot of good information here. I hope you enjoyed the lecture, but even if you didn't, just like my favorite professor, Dr. Phillips, used to say, it's better than a sharp stick in the eye. We'll see you.